Hello everyone, how are you? Today is November 25th, one day after Thanksgiving, 1 month before Christmas, and one heck of a day to try to go out shopping. But here we are, so let's learn how to Overwatch. Today's topic is important because we're going to be talking about what actually goes into winning a game of Overwatch. Sure, at some point it probably includes killing a few people on the other team, doing some damage, maybe capping a point or pushing a payload, and all that is good and well, but that is most likely just the end result of a ton of little things that a team does throughout the game. What we're talking about here is advantage. Overwatch is a game about gaining advantage as quickly and as efficiently as possible. When it comes to evenly matched teams, or even teams that aren't so evenly matched, whoever goes in with the most advantage usually comes out on top. The biggest advantage in the game, and what we'll be mostly talking about, is ultimate advantage. There is positioning, numbers advantage, and even team composition, and we'll definitely talk a little bit about those too, but for right now, let's stick to ultimates. When I talk about ultimate advantage, I don't just mean the raw numbers. Just because red team has 3 ultimates and blue team has 2, doesn't mean that the red team necessarily has an advantage. I've talked about ultimates a little bit before in my ult guide video, and in that I talk about a few categories: offensive, defensive, utility, all that good stuff. Go check it out if you haven't already. When it comes to a specific 6-man team composition, however, you can really boil it down into key ults and non-key ults. Key ults are ultimates that your entire teamfight strategy hinges on. Non-key ults are nice tools to have, but at the end of the day, they're just extras. Take McCree's ultimate, for example. Getting off a high noon is never a bad thing, but you don't expect it to make or break a team fight. Look at a Reinhardt or a Zarya ultimate, however, and popular team compositions like the tank comps that you've been seeing a lot lately rely on those ults to lock the other team down and to get in. Those would be considered key ults. Without your Reinhardt, without your Zarya, your team is much weaker, and getting those ults up is a priority. The same then goes for ults that counter those types of ultimates, defensive ults. So like Lucio, Zenyatta, and Mercy, they all come in here. Without one of them, you probably aren't going to be surviving through a big offensive ult from the other team, making those key ultimates as well. Key ults change depending on what your team's strategy is. Reaper's ultimate, for example, you might not normally think of as a key ult, but in the Beyblade Ana plus Reaper strats you saw teams run a while ago, Death Blossom was definitely a key ultimate. So try to identify the key ults on both teams in your games and keep track of how their usage correlates to your success. We then have positioning advantage, which is generally a bigger deal on King of the Hill maps because on attack and defense maps, the defender usually has the positional advantage by default. But sometimes it can come into play. On the second point of Gibraltar, for example, if the attackers start to take over the ship and the catwalk and all that area, it isn't a bad idea to invest a lot of resources as the defenders into retaking it, because that is a very important part of the map to have access to at that stage. When I talk about resources, by the way, I'm talking mostly about time, that's a big one, and ultimate charge. Anything that grants your team advantage, though, really can be considered a resource. Then there is numbers advantage. Using a lot of resources to take out a single player on the other team quickly and safely can put you into a 6 versus 5 situation, which might not be a bad idea. It is risky, however, because you have a small window to capitalize on it, and if you don't, then that player just respawns, and all that time and ult charge and whatever, all those resources you spent on it, is all down the drain. Finally, there is a team composition advantage. This isn't really as big of a factor as most players think, because most competitive team compositions don't really have any glaring weaknesses to exploit. Switching heroes also costs all of your ultimate charge. A well-timed swap against certain compositions can definitely be effective, but oftentimes the minor benefits you gain aren't really worth the lost ultimate charge advantage, so be very careful when you're thinking about swapping. Okay, so now that we know what things we need to win, let's talk about how we structure our gameplay to be advantage focused. Most players are kill focused, or maybe heal focused, or objective focused, or whatever. We want to be advantage focus. So we're going to make a little flowchart that we can follow to make sure we aren't wasting our potential, because you can have the sickest headshot skills in the world and it won't be nearly as effective if you don't play with good strategy. Now, I'm going to be talking just in terms of regular assault maps, but this can be applied to King of the Hill maps as well. It's just that the defender changes depending on who controls the point. If you control the point, you're the defender. If you don't, you're the attacker. Okay. At the start of the game, there are only two bits of advantage that teams can really have: positioning and team composition. The defenders should always have the positional advantage to start off. If you don't know what a good defensive position is, check out my map guide that I will link here. As far as team composition goes, you can't see each other's teams, or at least you shouldn't be able to. Remember that you shouldn't let the other team see your team composition before the round starts. Assuming you do that, though, just make sure you have a good team composition in general. And by make sure you have a good team composition, I don't mean whatever Envious ran yesterday in their tournament match, or yell at your team and harass your Sombra player all match while insulting his mother. I mean, think for yourself. What would make a good team composition, and pick your one hero accordingly. If you aren't sure what goes into making a good team comp or what you should pick in certain situations, check out my team composition guide. And yeah, there are a lot of references in this video, but there is a reason I do certain videos in the order I do them, believe it or not, because many of them actually build off of the others. Anyway, the gates have opened and the round has begun. The attackers should obviously push as early as possible because of the time element. Now, the defender has the positional advantage, meaning they will probably win the first fight of the round. If they don't, they're in for really big pain, and we'll go into that in a second, but just don't be discouraged as an attacker if you lose the first push. That's completely normal. Your key ults should try to farm themselves up as much as possible, your Zarya, your healers, all that good stuff, in this first fight. Now, once you respawn, most of these maps give the attackers a spawn advantage for the first section. That means that the distance that you have to travel to get to the objective is shorter than the distance that the defenders have to travel. You have to use this to your advantage. So once you respawn, push as fast as possible. I don't mean fast in the normal sense. I mean the most urgent fast you can possibly muster here, like Sonic fast. If done right and you don't waste any time, and if you killed anyone in the previous fight, they won't be there yet. Also, because you pushed again so quickly, the defenders won't have their ultimates yet. They will have the ult charge advantage, but they won't yet be at 100%. So you still have a short time window where it doesn't really mean anything. Done properly, the attackers should win the second push on most offense-favored first checkpoints and control points. To counter this, if you're on defense and you win the first fight, but you lost a few players, you have to get all the way back and avoid the fight until you have 6 again. Because remember, the attackers will reach the point before your defenders do. So even if this means letting the opposing team start capping the objective a little bit, or letting them push the cart a bit of a distance, you can't fight them until you have everyone up again. This is where most of the objective-focused, get on the objective type of players will make the wrong decision. And notice how this flowchart will always be the opposite for the attackers and the defenders. If the attacker wants to push fast, the defender wants to stall and not fight just yet, and vice versa. Now, if the attackers actually wound up winning their first push, the defenders are going to be hurting, like a lot. If you let the attackers stall out to 100% ult charge at this point, they'll pretty much take the second point or the second checkpoint guaranteed, unless they make a really big mistake. The only way to stop this, besides playing like a god when their team has a bunch of ults versus yours that doesn't, is to do a really fast push to break the attackers' momentum before they get to 100% ult charge. Kind of similar to how the attackers wanted to do that when you won the first fight. Wait a second, I think we have a pattern. So if you are way down on your ultimate charge and you know it, you want to push fast to take advantage of that time window when your opponent hasn't quite hit 100% yet. If you're way up on ults, you want to stall and avoid fighting because you'll passively hit 100% before your opponent does. But what about when the ults are even? Both teams have their ults up or you aren't sure. As the game progresses, ults get mixed and they match and they don't follow a set pattern. So it's your individual job to keep track of them. The more you do it, the better you get. In this case, the defenders should never be the one to initiate. Imagine both teams have a full set of 6 ults up, and they're on the last checkpoint or control point. If the attacking team initiates, uses all 6 ultimates, and wins the team fight, they win the round. But if the defenders initiate, use all 6 ultimates, and win the team fight, nothing happens. The attackers respawn, they come back in 15 to 20 seconds, and the round goes on. Now, if the attackers held on to all 6 of their ultimates, now the defenders don't have any, so they simply just use them all against the defenseless defending team, and they easily take the round. If you want to use a non-key ultimate to buy some time or to get into a better position as a defender, that's not necessarily a bad idea. But key ultimates like your Zarya, your Lucio, those type of ults, should definitely never be used by the defenders until the attackers have used their own key ultimates, in order to keep the ult advantage even. So that's about it. Rinse and repeat until the round is over, and that's how a good clean round of Overwatch should work if the attackers and defenders play to their strengths properly. Here is an image that shows the end results of my long explanation that I just gave. Like I said, this guide built on a lot of things that I've gone over before, so if you're new to the channel, definitely I suggest you go check out all those videos that I referenced and linked, because those will give you a much better understanding of what I'm talking about here. Let me know if you have any questions or need any clarification at all in the comments section. Follow me on Twitter for updates. That's in the description along with all the videos I referenced. Like if you liked it, which I hope you did, so stay positive and have a great day. Peace out, guys.